wanted it, you got it. Welcome into the OBR Straight Talk. My name is Jared Mueller, and boys and girls, I'm back. For those of you who don't know me, I am a Orange and Brown Report insider. I have been covering the Cleveland Browns and all of Cleveland sports for about 8 years now. Started with the Fansided Network, moved over to the OBR when we were a part of Scout Media, and now we are powered by 24/7 Sports, a part of the CBS Sports family. And I am proud to jump on board here as the host of Straight Talk, taking over for Bob and Scott. And I hope you enjoy the content that I plan to bring to you at least once a week, most likely 2, maybe even 3 times. I hope you like some of the guests that I'll be able to bring on to you. I've been blessed to meet and hang out with some of the best in the business. And so I look forward to bringing you some straight talk from some of those folks who have just done an amazing job of covering the league, the team, the NFL as a whole, those kind of things. But for me, you can expect what you've always gotten from me. I'm going to bring you what I have, what I can, and what I know. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, if you don't know me or haven't been around for a long time, I've been a professional counselor for about 19 years now. So technically I'm an independently licensed social worker. So that means I'm able to bill insurance companies, all of those kind of things. But layman's terms, I'm a counselor. I've worked with kids, adults, marriage and family, drugs and alcohol, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When it comes to the Browns and it comes to this media thing, I've just had the pleasure and the honor of getting to know some people to the point that thankfully at times I have some very, 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 very accurate sources to give you a little feel for, not to pat myself on the back, but just to give you a feel for what you're going to get from me and what OBR subscribers have gotten from me over the years. Just this off season, you would have known about the Kareem Hunt signing. You would have known about Andrew Berry leaving the Browns about 8 days early. You would have known many of the details of the Odell Beckham Jr. trade. You would have known where the Browns were opening the season, when their bye week was, when they were closing the season, all before those things happened. There's probably a few other things, but in general, I can just tell you that starting with my wife's cookies, which has gotten me credentialed for a lot of things in pro sports, and ending with just being a real dude, a real guy to people, I have been blessed by some great, great sources. And to be honest, I've been blessed with some great, great relationships. So those are the kind of things I'm going to bring to you here at Straight Talk. The good thing with the Browns starting to be good, we'll talk about the Browns, but we get to talk about a lot of things NFL because the Browns are actually good for once. So that means good teams, what good teams are doing matters to the Browns, and we get to talk about it here on the Straight Talk. So thank you for stopping by. Just a little bit about the rundown for today. We will start out with a question of the day. We're going to have that from time to time here on Straight Talk just to kind of get you engaged through social media and get to know a little bit more about me, get to know a little bit more about you. I want this to be interactive, not just send me your questions. While those are going to be good, I want to interact with you. I want you to get to know me. I want you to get a feel for the guy behind the microphone. I also want to get to know you. I want to know the people who are listening. I want to know what you like. I want to know what you are like. So the question of the day will be first. Then we're going to talk about John Dorsey and Jeffrey Simmons. I think there's a lot to talk about there. I think as the draft comes up this Thursday, the pairing of Dorsey and to Simmons, the pairing of the Browns to Jeffrey Simmons, the injured defensive tackle, has been really, really interesting. So we're going to spend a good amount of time on that. Then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about food because I love food. And so I'll actually throw it up on Periscope while I'm recording this podcast while I'm trying an interesting food item. So today we'll do that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about my fears when it comes to the AFC North. And so obviously the Browns have bigger goals than just winning the AFC North, but they play all the AFC North teams 2 games each year. So what is it about this upcoming draft that we should fear that the AFC North teams could do that could impact the Browns' goal to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 seasons. The easiest route, the one that takes everything else out of the equation, is to win the division. That's to beat those 3 teams 6 times. So what should we be worried about with the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens in this upcoming NFL draft? I will focus for each team on one specific player, and then I'll talk about just kind of overall the type of players I hope we do not see in the AFC North. And then we're going to be done for today. So each podcast, you're going to be looking between 30 and 45, 50 minutes. I don't like to keep you long. For some of you, it's a good break in your day. For some of you, you'll listen to the first half on your way to work and your second half on the way out of work. I want to make sure that this is efficient, enjoyable, entertaining, and informative for you. So again, we're going to try to keep it between 30 and 50 minutes every time. Now, when I have guests on, that might go a little bit longer, depending on how, long-winded they might be, or long-winded I am, because I love to interact. I love to engage with my guests. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for stopping by the OBR Straight Talk, powered by 24/7 Sports. Again, I am your host from now until hopefully the end of eternity, Jared Mueller. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller. That's at JaredKMueller. Let's go. So before our opening segment, we got to get to our question of the day, and here it is. Pretty simple. What is your old school jam? What is that song that you can look back on? Again, whether you're 18 or 80, what is that song that you look back and it is that song that you remember getting ready to go play a game, getting ready for a high school dance, that song that came on that got you just hyped, that song that you would play with your girls, with your boys, that song that just got you rolling. Now mine's a little interesting in that it's not that ultra hype song. I had some of those. Obviously, a ton of Metallica songs come to mind. There's a song by Buck Cherry called Lit. There are a ton of songs that just have that high beat per minute that got you going kind of thing. But I'll tell you what, my get you going, my old school jam, the song that I listened to before every sporting event I ever participated in. And when I say every sporting event I ever participated in, I mean golf. I mean basketball. I mean football. I mean intramurals. I mean currently co-ed softball team. Those kind of events, I still listen to one and only one song. And that song, you'll know by how it starts. And it goes a little something like this. Regulators! Mount up. Warren G and Nate Dogg's Regulators. That is my old school jam. And that is your question of the day. Get a hold of me or get a hold of us on Twitter at the OBR. Hashtag QOTD for question of the day. Let us know what is your old school jam.
You gotta keep them separated.
Segment 1 for episode 18 of the OBR Straight Talk is all about Mr. John Dorsey and his seemingly dedicated love affair with Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle that some have talked about as a top 5, top 10 talent in the upcoming NFL draft. If you don't know the story of Mr. Simmons, I'm not going to get into all of the off-the-field details, only to let you know there are off-the-field issues. They were from when he was about 18 years old coming into college, but there is a video, and it is not pretty. So when you talk about, and I actually wrote about this for a subscriber piece for the OBR, there's oftentimes going to be this talk about this talent would be a first round draft pick or a first round prospect or a top 10 or a top 5 if, and that if can be filled in with a lot of different things. If they didn't have this off the field issue, if they weren't injured, if they were a little bit more dedicated, if they hadn't gotten in trouble with the law and been suspended for a season. There are a ton of ifs. Browns fans, we're used to ifs. We know often the if is a big deal. If Josh Gordon could stay healthy, mentally healthy, not using substances, whatever the issue is, if Josh Gordon could have stayed on the field, Josh Gordon would have been one of the best wide receivers in NFL history. That's what many Browns fans think, and to be honest, it's probably not that far off. While I think Josh Gordon was a tad bit overrated as a target monster, Josh Gordon was an amazing talent on the field. He was big, he was strong, he was fast. If he could have stayed on the field, that would have been great. We heard the same thing about Caleb Brantley, who, if you don't remember, the Browns drafted late, who dropped according to every report, he was dropping because of a reported off-the-field issue that later got cleared up. And people said, the Browns got a steal. Caleb Brantley could have been a first-round pick. But the Browns got a steal. Did they? Because Caleb Brantley no longer plays for the Cleveland Browns. Caleb Brantley hasn't had an NFL career that anyone would point to as a first-round pick. And if you looked at the film and if you really broke down who Caleb Brantley was, he wasn't a player that was coming anywhere near the first round. Could he have been a third-round pick, fourth-round pick? Yeah, probably. But Caleb Brantley had so many issues on the field that his off-the-field issue, again, that later was cleared up, was just the excuse that many people used. Antonio Callaway is another example. If he wasn't off the Florida team for a full season, Antonio Callaway could have been a first-round pick. Are you sure? Antonio Callaway, with all his speed and everything that looked good last year, struggles running routes, has a lot to learn there. He showed a lot of development last year under Al Saunders, and you hope that development continues. But he also didn't play a full season. That's not just a little if. That is a big if that pushed him down the board, and his off-the-field issues brought up huge concerns at one point in time when he was pulled over with the smell of marijuana. All of that stuff seems to have been cleared up, but still, Antonio Callaway wasn't going to be a first-round pick. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the pedigree. He didn't have the production in Florida to be a first-round pick. But if is a really fun statement. So that brings us here to Jeffrey Simmons. Simmons, who off the field issue to a lot of people was going to push him down the boards, even though he was a high-level talent. And then getting prepared for the NFL draft, tore his ACL. And yet, Tony Pauline from the OBR, and then people after people after people and rumor after rumor after rumor continues to point to the fact that John Dorsey and Jeffrey Simmons are on a collision course in Thursday or Friday's NFL draft. Really? How many times have we known what John Dorsey wanted to do? How many times did we feel confident that John Dorsey was going to do anything since he took over the Browns? If you follow Ryan Burns, he goes under football sickness on Twitter, you'll see that he's been looking back at last year, Monday, the week of last year's draft. You know what he's found? A lot of articles saying that the Cleveland Browns and John Dorsey were going to draft Josh Allen. He's found a lot of articles and tweets that the Cleveland Browns are going to draft Sam Darnold. He hasn't found a lot that the Cleveland Browns are going to draft Baker Mayfield. In fact, when we started hearing the rumors that the Cleveland Browns were going to draft Baker Mayfield, that was Thursday, maybe late Wednesday night, Thursday going into the draft. And at that point, I reached out to people who were at the draft, covering the draft, knew people, really had a good sense, and to a person, all of them said, nope, it's going to be Sam Darnold. It's going to be Sam Darnold, Jared. I don't know what else is going on, but it's going to be Sam Darnold. That's what we're hearing. I was just backstage. They're preparing for it to be Sam Darnold. They expect it to be Sam Darnold. And we all know how that ended. How many of John Dorsey's big moves have we seen coming? Honestly, we could have guessed about Kareem Hunt, but we didn't see it coming. We had some idea that he would have interest in Odell Beckham Jr., but if you listen to the pundits, you listen to people who had sources, it was a dream. It was a long shot. It was unlikely until it wasn't. Even after the Browns agreed to trade Olivier Vernon and Kevin Zeitler, many people thought Beckham trade is off the table. Jarvis Landry trade, sign, came out of nowhere. Tyrod Taylor trade came out of nowhere. Baker Mayfield, drafted number 1 overall, came out of nowhere. Nick Chubb near the top of the second round. No one saw that coming, or very few people saw that coming. Austin Corbett, the number 33 overall pick, wasn't there. Denzel Ward at number 4 is a really interesting one because, again, you're going to get straight honesty from me. I can tell you that there were people, a number of them, who saw pieces of John Dorsey's board, knew enough about John Dorsey's board to very clearly tell me that Bradley Chubb was John Dorsey's number 1 player last year. You know the guy they didn't draft with the number 1 overall pick, Bradley Chubb? The guy they didn't draft with the number 4 overall pick, Bradley Chubb? So who really knows what's going on with John Dorsey at times? So the idea that, Denzel Ward came out of nowhere. Obviously a great player, played very well for the Cleveland Browns last year. But how many people were predicting Denzel Ward to the Cleveland Browns at number 4? Probably less than those that predicted Baker Mayfield to the Browns at number 1. And that's because John Dorsey covers his tracks. John Dorsey knows what he's doing when it comes to making sure no one knows what he's doing. So why is it that John Dorsey has openly talked about Jeffrey Simmons in the lead up to this year's draft? Why is it that when you talk to people in the league, there's a belief that he's going to figure out a way to get Simmons, and that maybe Simmons even wants John Dorsey to get him? Does that smell fishy to anyone else? And this isn't me trying to be conspiracy theory. This isn't me trying to say I know better, because I don't. With the Browns having the number 49 overall pick, I can tell you that I don't believe that's where they want to select a player. I believe they want to make a move up. And to be honest, I believe they want to make 2 moves. Whether that's 2 moves up, so trading up and then up again, or that is 2 moves as in trading up and then getting back into the second round. I think John Dorsey wants to make an impact this year. And that begs the question, why is John Dorsey talking about Jeffrey Simmons? And why is Jeffrey Simmons a fit for the Browns? The Browns look at themselves having a 2-year window given what's going on with the CBA, the likeliness that we may not have a season in 3 years. Jeffrey Simmons is not playing in 2019. He's not. If the Browns or any other team put him on the field next year, they are doing their fans, their team, and Jeffrey Simmons a gross injustice. So, John Dorsey is going to laud a player, going to possibly trade up for a player that cannot help him in year one of his 2-year strong window. That's not saying the Browns don't have a longer window than that. They do, but John Dorsey's looking at this 2-year window to win a Super Bowl. And one of those years, Jeffrey Simmons can't help. And then in year 2, Jeffrey Simmons coming off an ACL injury, getting back into shape, getting back into game shape, would possibly, likely be a backup to Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson, primarily Sheldon Richardson, a backup at a position that probably can be on the field 3 downs, but isn't always. Because if you can get 4 pass rushers, 4 edge guys, and do a NASCAR package, that can work as well. And if he's not on the field on 3rd down because Sheldon Richardson's on the field at 3rd down, all of a sudden you have to ask yourself a question. Would John Dorsey, who has been ultra aggressive about getting a team together that can win now and into the future, would he, at number 49 even, let's just start there, at number 49, would he draft a player that likely would not play for 1 year and likely would not start and or play a ton of minutes in year 2? Now, Jeffrey Simmons could have a ton of impact in 2020 in limited minutes. But with the 49th overall pick, after being very aggressive, John Dorsey is going to wave the white flag with that pick for at least year 1 and get possibly limited production in year 2 with a player that has off-the-field issues, which doesn't seem to bother Dorsey. Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Antonio Callaway. There are a ton of other players that we can name that John Dorsey has had interest in and has signed or drafted. But he's going to use the 49th pick on a player who doesn't produce in year 1 and has some level of limited production in year 2. And the reality is most people believe to acquire Jeffrey Simmons, John Dorsey is going to have to make an aggressive move up into the 1st round. So now you're telling me that in a 2-year window, John Dorsey is going to not only sacrifice the 49th pick, but maybe their 3rd round pick, maybe a 2020 2nd round pick, maybe Duke Johnson. You're telling me that John Dorsey, and again, he may do this, but help me walk through this logic. John Dorsey does a great job of covering his tracks. Yet many people believe he is going to draft Jeffrey Simmons, and he has talked openly about Jeffrey Simmons. John Dorsey believes there's a 2-year window for the Browns to win a Super Bowl before possible work stoppage due to labor issues. Yet is going to draft a player who can't produce in year 1 and has some level of limited production in year 2, and possibly is going to deal other picks, other players that he could have picked at those picks that could help him in that 2-year window to get this player. I'm not saying he won't do it, but ladies and gentlemen, it is my straight talk to you to say everything about John Dorsey's love for Jeffrey Simmons smells a lot like smoke. Smells a lot like John Dorsey working the media, working sources, working people he's known in the league for a long time. Because remember, last year, you heard it from old school league people. John Dorsey, Josh Allen. John Dorsey, Josh Allen. John Dorsey, Josh Allen. He fits what John Dorsey likes. He seems like someone John Dorsey likes. He likes a big, strong quarterback. All of that stuff. We heard that over and over again. Baker Mayfield may be the farthest thing from Josh Allen as a quarterback. And he, not Josh Allen, was the Cleveland Browns' number 1 overall pick. He is the Browns' franchise quarterback, and he is the reason Odell Beckham Jr. saw hope. He is the reason that all of this works. And it's not because John Dorsey likes a big quarterback. He likes a good quarterback. So we know what we know so far about John Dorsey. Aggressive, quietly works, doesn't normally give away too much. Everything about what we have seen from John Dorsey tells me Jeffrey Simmons will not be a Cleveland Brown when we get through this NFL draft. But then again, maybe, just maybe, John Dorsey is throwing so much smoke up so that people like me and teams and all of that believe it's just smoke to try to, I don't know, manipulate, finagle his way into Jeffrey Simmons, who some believe would be right in the same conversation like Quinnen Williams and Ed Oliver. So could I see John Dorsey wanting to get a steal of a deal? Absolutely. It's one of the reasons he's okay with the off-the-field issues. It's not because he likes the off-the-field issues. It gives him an opportunity to get a discount on a player. Jeffrey Simmons has off-the-field issues and has a health issue that could give John Dorsey an opportunity for a steal of a deal. On the other hand, maybe that player, maybe that steal of a deal, maybe is a guy with a last name of Sweat who has a little heart issue that some teams won't clear and could fall right out of the first round right into John Dorsey's lap. We'll find out in a couple days, but right now, given everything we know, given my analysis as a mental health professional, I just don't see it. I don't see John Dorsey showing his cards for so long to so many people, and I don't see Jeffrey Simmons donning the orange and brown in 2020 because he's not going to play in 2019. What do you think? Do you think Dorsey is just that smitten? Do you think Dorsey maybe lost a step because he's feeling himself with Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward and Nick Chubb and Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and David Njoku and Myles Garrett, Larry Ogunjobi, Olivier Vernon? Wow, the Browns have a lot of talent, don't they? It's a lot of fun. So maybe John Dorsey just thinks everything will work out for him. And maybe he's just willing to take that risk and talk up Jeffrey Simmons and still move up to get him. Me, I'm skeptical.
It's the sound. It's time to start a celebration.
All right, OBR Straight Talk and now Periscope. Welcome back in for our segment on food. Again, my name is Jared Mueller, now host of the OBR Straight Talk. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller. Thank you for stopping in. So, what we're going to do today for our food segment is actually crunchy chickpeas. You can see that I've already opened the package because I wanted to have an idea of what I was going to be eating. But if you don't know what a chickpea is a bean. If you've ever had hummus, that's a ground-up version of chickpeas. If you've had falafel, that's a fried version of chickpeas with a whole bunch of herbs and spices and all kinds of fancy stuff to it. What we know about chickpeas is they have a lot of protein in them. This little bag of crunchy chickpeas says it has 8 grams of protein. I'm not sure how good this is going to be. We're going to find out here in a second. But 8 grams of protein. Now, if you're like me and sometimes you get sent to the store to do shopping for somebody else, chickpeas in a can are also called garbanzo beans. No idea what the actual difference is, but chickpeas and garbanzo beans are the same thing. So we are going to have a try here. So again, this is a product by The Good Bean. It says it's sea salt crunchy chickpeas with 8 grams of protein per bag. And the bag is, those of you who are listening, is the size of kind of that bag of peanuts or whatever that you'll get. And the chickpea kind of does look just like a chickpea would look once it's been dried and salted and all kinds of stuff. So 8 grams of protein, you'd have to eat a lot of these. Based on the texture, it's pretty hard, but it's light. So unlike a peanut, it doesn't have a kind of a density to it at all. but it is salty, and you can tell it's very, very hard. So they took a chickpea and dried it out. So we're going to try these. Obviously, I'm starting with something very simple and very easy. But as we go through this, sometimes I'm going to bring some stuff home from my wife's bakery. Sometimes I'm going to ask you guys, what should I try? I'm going to find something, as long as it's not something I'm allergic to, shellfish, or something that'll make me throw up, some things like that. I'm going to try some stuff. I'm always willing to get down like that. So here we go. I'm going to try some chickpea. Again, this is the Good Bean sea salt crunchy chickpeas. Seems like this is something healthy people would eat. So, yeah. So these chickpeas kind of taste like the shell of a peanut with a little bit more crunch to them. I don't encourage them. They are not tasty at all. Basically, it's salt and some dried junk in my mouth. Not overly delicious. Not something I'm that interested in eating ever again. And I apologize, because right now it's just kind of stuck in there. But that is not a high recommendation from Jared. So again, thank you for stopping by on Periscope. Yeah, not overly delicious. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully you'll join into the OBR Straight Talk. So far we talked a little bit about John Dorsey, talked about his quote-unquote love for Jeffrey Simmons. And then we're going to look at kind of finishing it off with our second big segment. Talk about the AFC North. Talk about the fears that I have about what some of the teams in the AFC North could do for this upcoming NFL draft, because that's really important for the Cleveland Browns. So, again, thank you for stopping by our first opportunity to try live on Periscope while recording the Straight Talk from the OBR. Look forward to seeing you more. Look forward to trying something a little bit more tasty than the Good Beans crunchy chickpeas. I don't care how many grams of protein that thing has. That was not tasty. Go ahead and skip it. Now that I've got that unfortunate taste out of my mouth, we're going to jump into our second segment for today's OBR Straight Talk. Now it's talking about the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns want to be competitive. They want to make the playoffs. They want to win a Super Bowl. They believe they have the talent to do it. But in the end, they have to go through the AFC North, which for years has been the best division in football. Or right up there. The Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens, all of them have been competitive for the last 5 to 10 years. Some of them longer, some of them a little shorter. But the Browns have been stuck in a division that's been very good, and they've been very bad. It is a really bad combination that has been pretty poor for Browns fans for years. Now, with Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb and Odell Beckham Jr. and all the players that I've already listed, the Cleveland Browns are ready to turn the page, but still have to go through the AFC North. So what could happen in this year's NFL draft, specifically talking about the first round, that could really cause trouble for the Cleveland Browns, both in the short term and the long term? So we're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Looking at the Bengals roster, they have a long way to go to get back to the kind of roster they had years ago. At one point in time, the Cincinnati Bengals had the best roster in the league and Andy Dalton. And the Cincinnati Bengals didn't win a playoff game because they had the best roster in the league and Andy freaking Dalton. So that didn't work for them. And so while the roster has a lot of improvement it needs, there is one pick that has me worried and should have Browns fans worried. And that pick is from a team halfway or somewhat halfway between Cincinnati and Cleveland. The Ohio State Buckeyes have a starting quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, who in many people's opinion, including this guy's, is the number one quarterback in this year's draft. Kyler Murray gets all the hype. Dwayne Haskins may in the end turn out to be the best. But we've heard a lot of rumblings that Haskins' stock is all over the place. There are some people who believe the Giants will take him at 6, and there are others who say the Giants have no interest in taking Dwayne Haskins at all, which leads us to our biggest worry. The Cincinnati Bengals have been held back because their idea that Andy Dalton or a Trent Dilfer-like quarterback could lead a team in the new era of NFL football has failed. And we want to continue to see that fail. And a quarterback like Dwayne Haskins, especially if it gets a redshirt year. Again, he only started 1 year at Ohio State, so a year to kind of get his bearings, to get a feel, to let the Bengals bring in more talent. All of a sudden, the Cincinnati Bengals have their franchise quarterback. Wouldn't that be something if the Cleveland Browns finally got their franchise guy, finally got Baker Mayfield in place, and then all of a sudden, there are the Cincinnati Bengals with Dwayne Haskins, all lined up to go toe-to-toe with Baker Mayfield for the next decade, 15 years. For me, that is a huge concern coming into this NFL draft. It is the thing that I am wishing for most out of all the things that we could see, besides, some crazy fall or trade up where the Browns get Ed Oliver, somebody like that. My biggest concern is that Dwayne Haskins will end up in Cincinnati and put the Cincinnati Bengals in position to be successful years to come. They have their young head coach in Zach Taylor. We all know this is a coach-quarterback league. With Dwayne Haskins, I'm certain the Bengals would have got that part of the equation right. And if you get that part of the equation right and have a young offensive type coach, it's very possible you're going to get both pieces of that puzzle correct, because that quarterback is going to help that coach, and that coach is going to help that quarterback. So for the Bengals, the part that Browns fans should be looking at and should be fearing most is Dwayne Haskins. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going to stay at the same position, and though it's going to be unlikely, we want to make sure we talk about what could happen if the Pittsburgh Steelers address their long-term quarterback need behind Ben Roethlisberger. It's very unlikely that the Steelers will make a move like this, but the Browns and their fans should be afraid. And that move is very simply taking advantage of the Arizona Cardinals, who seem likely, since the NFL Combine, when everyone was hearing it and everyone knew it, seem likely to draft Kyler Murray number 1 overall in this year's draft. That's after trading up last year to select Josh Rosen out of UCLA. Rosen didn't have a great year, which led to Steve Wilkes getting fired after 1 year as a head coach, which the Browns now have as a defensive coordinator. We'll see how that works out. But Rosen wasn't given a lot to work with. Rosen wasn't put in a position to be successful. And because of that, and because of the hype of Kyler Murray, because of the success of Baker Mayfield, all of a sudden the Arizona Cardinals could end up spending 2 first-round picks and all that they used to trade up last year to get Josh Rosen and a wasted season on a quarterback in Kyler Murray, leaving Josh Rosen ready to be traded, but who's going to trade for him? Washington has some interest. We'll see. The Giants don't seem to be very interested. The Miami Dolphins don't seem to be very interested, but could have some interest. So what if the Pittsburgh Steelers, planning for the long-term replacement for Ben Roethlisberger, which having to face Larry Ogunjobi, Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, Jannard Avery, Sheldon Richardson, and the rest of the Browns defense could come sooner than later, what if the Pittsburgh Steelers sent a 3rd-round pick to Arizona for Josh Rosen? What if the Cincinnati Bengals move from Andy Dalton to Dwayne Haskins after 2019, and the Pittsburgh Steelers move from Ben Roethlisberger to Josh Rosen after the 2019 season? And all of a sudden, with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, Baker Mayfield isn't looking at an AFC North that is on decline, with aging quarterbacks Ben Roethlisberger, Andy Dalton, and Joe Flacco all outside of their prime or getting there, or maybe never really had a prime. All of a sudden, Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, while probably still the number 1 quarterback in the division, would be looking at Dwayne Haskins in year 2 in Cincinnati. They'd be looking at Josh Rosen in his third year in the league after getting to sit behind Ben Roethlisberger and figure out what works best for him. And Lamar Jackson in 2019 and 2020 in his second and third year developing and still the athletic dual threat that made him so dangerous last year. And all of a sudden, you're looking at the AFC North with 4 high-level quarterback prospects, young quarterbacks with a lot of talent. All of a sudden, the Browns' route to the playoffs, much less a Super Bowl, is a little more rough. It's a little bit more difficult. Because even if Mike Tomlin gets fired or John Harbaugh gets fired, you have a lot more options for head coach when you have a good young quarterback. And that brings us to the Ravens, who already have Lamar Jackson and are drafting a little bit later in the draft, in the first round. There are a lot of players here that could scare you. But for Lamar Jackson, the player that scares me the most is Akeem Butler. Butler, the Iowa State product, is a humongous target. His catch radius is impressive. And he would give Lamar Jackson options to just throw the ball up, because Butler's going to make a play on the ball. He has speed, he has size, he has jumping ability. He is the type of receiver that can make plays when accuracy is a little bit of an issue. It's what teams have done for years. It's what the Carolina Panthers have tried to do for Cam Newton, who, while decently accurate, isn't pinpoint accurate. So what did they go out and do? They got him Kelvin Benjamin, this huge receiver. They got him Devin Funchess, this huge receiver. They got him Ted Ginn, who's not a huge receiver, but he makes up for accuracy issues with his amazing speed. Hakeem Butler could do all of that for Lamar Jackson. So when I look at the AFC North, what worries me is the Bengals and the Steelers taking care of their long-term quarterback needs with Dwayne Haskins and Josh Rosen, and the Baltimore Ravens giving Lamar Jackson the type of receiver who can make up for his mistakes and make teams pay if they load the box to stop the run. Because Butler can make plays short, middle, and deep in a way that can really put defenses in a bind when you also have to worry about Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson running the ball, and the 75 different tight ends that they've signed or drafted over the last couple years. Just a little hyperbole with 75. And finally, the other thing that worries me about the AFC North is a very simple concept. Should teams look for their offensive linemen? Sure, absolutely. But when you start to think about what you don't want your opponent to have playmakers. You don't want your opponent to have an opportunity to impact the game, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that is my second part of my overall concern for the AFC North going into the NFL draft, is obviously taking care of your quarterback has to be number one, and impacting the opposing quarterback, in this case Baker Mayfield, has to be number two. And so if the Bengals can't get Dwayne Haskins, does Ed Oliver fall to them? All of a sudden you have Geno Atkins and Ed Oliver right up the gut. What about the Steelers? What if one of the Devons, the inside linebackers, what if one of them falls to them? And they have a perfect replacement for Ryan Shazier, who emotionally, obviously, a lot going on there. All of a sudden, there's a playmaker in the middle of that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And even though I don't value linebackers, with TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward and the rest of that defense still being pretty darn good, an inside linebacker who can stop the run, can cover, can make plays in the backfield, tackles for loss. Ooh, that could be really tough. And then the Ravens, who have lost a lot of players but on defense, but added Ed Reed to the back. What if they're able to find another Terrell Suggs, another pass rusher to get after Baker Mayfield, to take advantage of the fact that while Baker Mayfield has a ton of weapons around him, his two tackles still are Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard. So all of a sudden, what if the Ravens find that other pass rusher and get after Baker Mayfield? Don't give him time to get the ball to OBJ, to Jarvis, to David Njoku, all of those kind of things. because the tackles maybe struggle, and maybe Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken then have to keep the tight ends in to block or the running backs in to block to just give Baker Mayfield time. The number one worry in the AFC North has to be the quarterback play. How do the Bengals, how do the Steelers, how do the Ravens take care of their quarterbacks for now, and do they have one in the future? Right now, Andy Dalton is not the guy. Not a lot of worries. Even if they add a bunch of talent and weapons around him, we're not that worried about what Andy Dalton can do against the Browns. Roethlisberger, sure. Lost Antonio Brown, lost Martavius Bryant, lost Le'Veon Bell, has made a lot of plays in his career. And yes, is there a level of concern about him? Absolutely. But at this point in time in his career, that concern continues to go down as the Browns' talent continues to go up. And then you have Lamar Jackson, who has shown that he can make plays in the league. But what if you give him a receiver who can help him make up for any mistakes he makes, that can put defenses in a bind? And then the rest of the draft, what happens when the AFC North restocks its loaded defensive side of the ball with playmaker after playmaker after playmaker? Those are the things that you'll need to be looking at. For far too long, Browns fans have only looked at the NFL draft and really focused on their team or what they wish their team would have done. Now Browns fans need to focus on the AFC North. What are they doing, and how can the Browns counter it? Or what are they doing to counter what the Browns are doing? There are concerns about the AFC North. Are they on their downswing, or could they make just a few moves and bring themselves back on that upswing and make life more difficult for Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns? So that's our show, episode 18 of the OBR Straight Talk, but it is the new beginning for me as the host. Again, you can look forward to me calling on a bunch of friends so that you're not just going to be hearing my voice. Some of these segments, one or two of them, will be me talking to someone who I respect that covers this league, that covers this team. Again, real blessed to just have some great relationships developed over the years at the Combine. And so I'm looking forward to sharing the insight of those great people with my great fans, with the OBR's great fans. So next time, looks like we will be getting set up right before Thursday's draft, just to kind of see where we're at. What's going on? Do we think something's going to happen? Are the Browns going to be active? Can we all go see Avengers Endgame instead? What will the Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens do? And then maybe even another one going into Saturday after some big moves the Browns have made in the second and third round on Friday. So that is what you have to look forward to. Again, this is the OBR Straight Talk. I am your host, Jared Mueller. You can get a hold of me at Jared K. Mueller. That's JaredKMueller. And you can find the OBR at the OBR, or you can go to theobr.com. Again, we are a part of 24/7 Sports, which is a part of CBS Sports. We are all one big family. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for being a part of my family. I look forward to the next 7-10 years talking Cleveland Browns football with you, the best, most loyal fans in the league.